Hey everybody, welcome to another morning of spiritual healthcare. Glad to see everybody. It is a beautiful day. Well, it's sort of a beautiful day here. It's really windy here. It's crazy windy. This is day 37. This is day 37 of this craziness. Um, and I'm so glad to see everybody this morning. We've got a really cool topic today that I want to delve into, and it's a case, actually, a very famous case. But I think there's so much that we can learn from this particular case. So I want to break it down today to talk about, what can we learn from the famous Enfield case from 1977. Good morning, everybody. Hey, y'all. How are you guys doing this morning? Hope you guys had a great evening and morning. It is nice to see everybody. It's day 37 of spiritual healthcare. This is crazy. Good morning, Ricky. Good morning, Patricia. Good morning, Chris. Good morning, everybody logging in. It's so nice to see you. Good morning, Jay. Everybody, it is just awesome to see everybody in the morning. I love this. As I say, we're going to break down a really famous case today because I think there's a lot that we can learn within it, no matter what side of the coin that you land on, because this case in particular is there's been a lot of debate around it and things like that. So we're gonna take a look at that today and figure out what it is that we can learn from all of this stuff. Good morning, Lori. You're in Ontario. I'm glad to see. Yay, Canadians! There's like, I get so many people from all over the world logging into spiritual healthcare every day and then watching it later on YouTube and the replays and all of that kind of thing. So I love it. I love it. This is great. So it's so good to see everybody. I hope you guys, as I say, had a really good evening last evening, and got a lot of reading and TV. I know Paranormal 911 aired last night in the States. Again, the second episode of the second season, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. I can't remember which episode it was. It's been in Canada now for a while, so we kind of got it before you guys. So I never know what episode that you guys are on. Good morning, Burton. You're in BC, and I love seeing where people are from. Put where you're from in the chat, because it's so neat to see where everybody's coming in from in the mornings. There's just from all over the place. People, I know there's been people in from Australia and all sorts of everywhere. And there it's like it's so early there in the morning, so early. Yeah, that's crazy. So I hope. And Matt says hello. Of course, you're American. Lots of Americans logging into this, which I love. As I say, I hope you guys are enjoying Paranormal 911 this season. It was a very interesting season to film. Lots of very unique cases, and the crew and I we had so much fun. Going through and putting it together and seeing what was available. The crew worked so hard on this one, like so hard. They were so worn by the time they were done, but they've done a really good job. So, yeah. So hey, Jason. Hi, Will. Nice to see you guys. It is just so awesome to see everybody every morning. I just love it. It's like it gets me out of bed, and I love the fact that it's such a beautifully orchestrated routine now. We all get up and sort of delve into this and start our day just on the right foot, and I think that's so cool. I just love being able to do this every day, and your feedback, you guys, has been incredible. I've just been so unbelievably thankful for everybody's feedback, because I know a lot of you guys are you're getting so much out of this, and I am too. Make no mistake, I'm getting as much out of it as you guys are. I love your questions and that dialogue and whatnot. I just love it. Good morning, Des. How are you? Always good to see you guys every single day. It's awesome. But I want to today delve into a very famous case that ended up being featured in the movie The Conjuring 2, that's known as the Enfield Poltergeist case. Poltergeist case is This one is a really interesting one. It has to do with the Society of Psychical Research, and we're going to get into that. Burton wants to know, is 911 Explained part of the production? No, I haven't actually seen that. I have not seen 911 Unexplained. That sounds cool though. I have not seen that. I didn't even know that one existed. That sounds kind of neat though. So the Enfield poltergeist case is really unique in a number of different ways. So it actually happened in Enfield, England in 1977. And it took place around a young family, single mom who was struggling a lot financially. Her husband had left her with quite a few kids, and they were, and the kids were having a hard time with the divorce and with, all of the stuff that was going on. They didn't have a lot of money. They were pretty broke. They were on welfare. And so they were really struggling. And to make matters more complicated, the youngest daughter, Janet Hodgson, she wasn't well liked in school. She was really bullied in school and things like that, and you just didn't really fit in to begin with, which is really hard, and something that I can definitely relate to. I was a very bullied kid in school. I was not well liked in school. I was always the art kid. I know some of you guys can probably totally relate to that. I was always, I was drawing and creating productions and all of this kind of thing. It was always a thing. And I always loved the paranormal too. So I was kind of the weird kid. But yeah, I had a bad time in school as well. And so Janet, as she was dealing with this, she really had nowhere to go. There was no peace in her life one way or the other. So, going home, she's dealing with this financial stress and stuff like that, and the stress of her mom and the stuff going on with her father. And then, she had this stuff going on at school. So Peggy Hodgson, who was her mom, basically started to get reports from Janet that she was having these weird things happen, like hearing things in her room, seeing pieces of furniture move on its own, all sorts of really strange things like this. And as she was trying to sort of get her head around it, she thought Janet was full of it. She was like, the kid's trying to get attention and that kind of thing. And so as things were kind of progressing, the incidences of this paranormal activity started to increase, and Janet started complaining that she was watching her brother's furniture move, her little brother's furniture, and all sorts of stuff. And long story short, the case ended up escalating relatively quickly. And it frightened them enough that they ended up actually running to their neighbors, trying to get help from the neighbors, because they didn't know what to do. They had phoned the police at one point, just at the beginning, and the police came and didn't know what to do about it. And that was to lead into months and months of them repeatedly calling the police, and the police they're coming to the house. The family's terrified. The cops don't know what to do. It's way out of their pay grade. And they're back and forth. They don't know what's going on. But the case itself became very unique because they started experiencing an entity by the name, or that called itself, Bill Wilkins. And this is where things got really tricky, because there's a lot of people that believe with the Enfield case that this whole entire thing was a hoax. They just believe it was a hoax. They thought Janet was just faking it completely. And the problem was that Janet was caught faking it twice. So that does not help. That does not help. We got a young kid, she's getting, she wants attention. She's looking for that validation, and she ends up faking a number of activities trying to get people to believe her, which of course terribly backfires. But the interesting dialogue that went on between this entity that was calling itself Bill Wilkins, and I'll explain that in a second, and Janet, was that Bill Wilkins was basically saying that he was missing his family, that he was, he was just wanting to come home. He's searching for his family, which is like this, it's pretty, serious sob story. But the activity, of course, that was going along with it doesn't match up with the story. So right away when we see that difference, we automatically know that we've got a situation where you've got an entity that is not a person. That's not human. That's not that doesn't make any sense. You don't have somebody who's missing their family beating up on a little kid. That just doesn't make any sense, right? So it's putting on this bluff of Bill Wilkins. And the tricky part about this was the fact that Bill Wilkins, the actual guy, used to live in that house. He died in an armchair. He fell asleep and died in an armchair due to a hemorrhage. So the entity was pulling facts that actually happened within the house itself, which makes it tricky. So in the movie The Conjuring 2, Ed and Lorraine Warren were, of course, the first responders into this case and stayed throughout the entire thing, where in reality, that's not actually what happened at all. And when the movie came out, the Society of Psychical Research was really upset because the SPR was the lead investigators on that case. Ed and Lorraine Warren only were there for about 24 hours, if that. They kind of popped in, popped out, and left, and that was it. So the SPR was really upset because they were like, hey, we were the ones that literally, managed this entire thing, and you guys kind of snubbed us. So that didn't go over very well. But the lead investigator on this case was a fellow by the name of Maurice Grosse, as well as Dr. Guy Playfair and Dr. John Beloff. And all of them were two of them were parapsychologists. Maurice Grosse was an engineer, and he had actually recently lost his daughter, so he had this emotional investment into the case and to help Janet and Peggy out because of all this stuff that was going on, and he really related to the kids. So what was fascinating as they went along, and I think one of the hallmarkers of this case specifically was the fact that when they actually sat down to record any of this activity, the unique part about this was that instead of them recording voices like electronic voice phenomenon or EVP with like recorders and stuff like that, and usually during EVP you ask a question or something and then you play it back and it comes in on a different frequency, so you can't actually physically hear it. You have to wait till it's recorded. And in this case, this was a unique difference. They were hearing this supposed entity right in the space with them. So they were having consistent dialogues that they were recording on a regular basis. And there's hours and hours and hours of these tapes. When I do ritual exorcism in film and television, the show, we actually go through and play some of these tapes because they're fascinating to listen to. A lot of people believe that Janet was completely full of it, that she was faking this. But the SPR and Maurice Grosse, they were convinced that this was absolutely not a hoax. What they did was they ended up actually having everybody in the room fill their mouths with water, and then they would duct tape everybody's mouth so that there was no chance of ventriloquism, there was no chance of, throwing voices and stuff like that. And of course, anybody who couldn't spit the water out at the end was probably the culprit, but yet everybody at the end of this always spit the water out. So it was very interesting. So there's, as I say, you can fall on both sides of the coin, but the SPR was convinced it was genuine. Chris has a great question. He's asking, so based on previous discussions, it's been mentioned that people often manifest their reality. She'd faked it before. Did it attach her to her personal fears? That's a really, really great question. And my personal take on this case, I think it was a genuine case. And from my understanding and my experience with paranormal phenomenon, this is what I want to get into today, is the fact that when we get a case like this, and we get, especially with kids, and we start to see bits and pieces of trauma, past trauma, we start to see some of this stuff begin to fill roles, right? So in this case, we've got a young kid. She's bullied. She's isolated. She's not being validated by her peers. She's not being validated by the people around her. The press got a hold of this and went crazy as hell. And they had it all over the front page. So she was getting harassed. All of this stuff was going on. She did not want the film made either, by the way. The Conjuring 2, she did not want the film made. And she's been just done with this whole thing. But what I find very interesting is that, when you get a kid who is sitting in this emotional position, And you've got a kid who's, missing her father. She's looking for her dad. All of this emotion is going on. She doesn't have any friends, and then all of a sudden you've got this entity that's moved in and is saying, I miss my kids. I'm looking for my kids. Where are they? So on and so forth. And even though it's my opinion that this was a bluff, I think there was no Bill Wilkins. I think it was, some sort of a negative personality or intelligence there. But, you get a situation like that and you can watch that validation become something that is a hole that needs to be filled. There's this void that ends up needing to be filled. And this is a big problem when it comes to especially, young kids and things like that. Because as soon as we've got that situation where somebody's looking for that validation, somebody's looking for that, that missing piece, then we start to have a problem. We start to find that these entities and things like that are starting to fill in these roles. And we see it in the physical reality too. It's not just in haunting situations. We see it in situations like, kids who are looking for family and end up finding gangs, or end up finding food, or something to fill in that space where really what they're missing is connection with who they are. And when we get, especially kids that are, they're not being validated, they're being bullied, they're being told that they are just fundamentally wrong. They're just fundamentally wrong. Then that leaves a massive, massive hole. And when we look at things like kids, when we look at things like, young people who are missing that part of themselves or missing that connection, we have to really begin to look at how we are infusing them with the knowledge of how to find their connection again. Once we get a situation like the Enfield case, where now all of a sudden we've got this compounded problem over and over and over and over again, we start to see we've got a real issue with finding that center once again, because once that trauma gets going, it starts to snowball, doesn't it? And the damn thing is that, the way the universe is, once we start focusing on something that's traumatic, once we start focusing on something that's, upsetting or negative or anything like that, that momentum starts to build. We start to look for evidence to validate that trauma. We start to look for more things that, confirm the fact that maybe, we have bad luck, or, we are having a bad time or anything like that. And that's why often, when we start to have a bad day in the morning, then that bad day tends to spiral. So it's something that I think we really, really need to pay attention to, when we're dealing with any sort of haunting like this, because let me tell you, when we've got a situation like the Enfield case in particular, and we've got this influence that has kind of stepped in, and like an entity like this, or whether it be non-physical or a person, being able to then start to crack through what that toxicity is and what's being told to us becomes really difficult when we're not in connection with who we are. So the more that we can teach our kids, the more that we can realize the importance of that validation, the more we end up seeing more kids that are moving through this life experience with this positive connection to the paranormal. So many times that I've found over the years is that people, and especially, children and things like that we end up giving them the message very, very early on that who they are is just not enough. It's not enough, whether it be teachers, whether it be other students, other kids, all of that. And it begins to leave a lasting imprint up the chain of our lives. So where did the Enfield case end? Well, it didn't end well, because nothing ended up really getting fixed. None of this was ever really healed for them. So Janet Hodgson, she ended up getting married very early. She was 16 when she ended up getting married. So talk about trying to find that a filler for that hole, right? She really was a daddyless daughter in so many ways. And she ended up, because of that, getting married, in my opinion, very early, and having a young child, and her son ended up dying in 2016. So you've got a situation again where you've got somebody who, in my opinion, is kind of looking to fill that gap and that hole, because she didn't have that validation or that father figure moving in, growing up. So that the universe tends to replace these things in various ways until we start to actually heal. Until we start to heal and take a hard look at that trauma. Until we do, we're going to keep looking for things to fill that space up. We just do. Peggy's one son, he ended up passing away very, very early. And Peggy ended up staying in the house. The activity did not stop. She ended up staying in the house until her death. And when the new family moved into the house, they had activity going on as well, and they reported it. So that energy really did persist throughout the years. It left a massive impact. And I think when we really start to acknowledge just the level and the role that how we are playing out, where it is we are missing that validation, when we can identify that, we have really got to start to take a look at the relationship between that and everybody else, which is one of the reasons why the process that I want to give you guys today, the process is in relation to this subject. How we move through the world and the confidence we have in moving through the world is so much about not only self-validation, but the people around us and how they validate us as well. We know that when what we put out, we get back. We do. And the more self-validation that we're able to allow for ourselves, the more we will end up seeing all of these people begin to reflect that validation. So as soon as we're looking for that external stuff, as soon as we're moving towards, trying to find it externally, the less we will get of it. Because unless we can turn around and internally validate who we are and know who we are and make that connection, then unfortunately the people around us won't see a reason to validate us either. And they will continue to give us reasons to not do it. It's so interesting because, when we begin to, it's so easy to blame the people around us, especially when we're dealing with hauntings, and things like that. We go to people and say, this is happening. In the case of the Hodgson family in Enfield, they went to their neighbors. They were going everywhere they possibly could for help, and noticing that nobody was really validating what was going on, until the SPR came in and started to help. But here they were, experiencing over and over and over again, specifically Janet, this constant lack of validation, to the point where she ends up starting to fake these incidents, trying to get people to respond to that. So when we can see that overall pattern, you go to school, you're told that you're beingness, you're breathing, your existence is wrong. However that manifests, whether you want to believe that this case was completely a hoax or whether it was true, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, we still have this incredible lesson that we can take away from how something like this can absolutely blow up and get out of control. So whether you think, that yes, there was this negative entity that was, that filled this gap in this little girl's life in a really negative way, or whether you believe that this was a situation where, she was lacking validation as a kid, and therefore was going to try to get that validation and attention by faking incidents. Regardless of where you fall on the spectrum, it doesn't matter, because what we have to understand and learn here is the toxicity of not being able to be validated and at a really young age, and where that can end up. It's really important. So the process that I want to give you guys is to be able to look at your environment and figure out, not only, are you able to be okay without the validation of the people around you, but also whether or not those people are either contributing or contaminating to what you've got going. Are these people helping you, or are they the type of people that as you go to them with things that you're concerned about or you need or something like that, and you're getting some sort of, dysfunctional or unhelpful response and energy. Some people, this life is like having a wagon, and you're pulling that wagon up the hill, and honestly that wagon is going to have people that are either going to help you push it, or they're going to get on the wagon and put their feet up. And we have to decide whether or not those people are helping us push that wagon up the hill, or are they putting their feet up, or are they digging their heels into the dirt. There's that angle of it too. So we have to really start to pay attention to that and what that is. So take a hard look. Take a look at your experience, and take a look at the people that are either hindering or helping, and get clear about what that looks like. Because as soon as you can start to bring in that self-validation and really start to integrate your own well-being, your own wellness, your own opinion of yourself, into that process of looking for where to go, looking towards that next goal, whatever it is for you, it's really incredible how much that starts to change, and you start not putting so much stock in what other people are thinking. It's really funny because, as I've moved forward with Entity Seeker and other projects that I've done, Snake and Pyre, and other things that I've circuses that I put together, and all sorts of theater stuff. It's very interesting because, you will get the people who will, they look like they're going to support you. They look like they've got a big smile on their face, and in the background, they're doing everything they possibly can to pin your coat to the ground so you're not moving forward. And it's something that you learn, especially the more successful, the more the more forward you become in your momentum, the more you realize just how important it is to have these right people around you, and to be able to do that self-validation and heal up stuff like what Janet was experiencing. And I speak from personal experience, because, as I say, I've had to do this myself on multiple levels, because when I was in school, there was none of that. Stephanie, the wonderful woman that I co-founded Entity Seeker with years ago, apart from her and just a handful of other people, there was nobody around me to do that. So I had to learn to do that at a very early age. And it has been crucial for me to be able to ignore, the crazies, because let me tell you, especially the paranormal world, let me tell you how crazy they get, okay? Like, crazy as hell, especially when you get into film and television and stuff like that. There are some crazy people out there. There are some haters out there, and they might be within your own family. They might be sitting at your dinner table. But the ability to tune that out, the ability to be able to self-validate, and have a vision is just super important. So it's very interesting. Take a look at that today if you get a chance. Figure out where people are sitting in your life. Take an inventory. Take an inventory. Where are these people up to? We're so used to going on Facebook and doing a Facebook friend call, right? We go on and we're like, okay, I haven't talked to you, you've been a jerk, and we cull our friends list, but sometimes we don't do that in person. So we gotta make sure that we've got the right people around us. And not only culling that list, but I would also is adding to. So for example, if you want to, let's say, be a writer or something like that, how many people do you have around you that are, writers and are, can move you forward in writing? How many of those do you have? Are you the smartest one in the room? And if you are, that's not good. You should be able to look and go to these different people for different things. So, all of these things, when we look back at Enfield, things that Janet didn't really have, that probably would have, really made a massive difference in this situation when her father took off. I think if we were to rewrite her experience with that in place, I think we would see a very different kid. It'd be really interesting. So that being said, I have a awesome and very relevant reading today from Faith in the Valley. that I want to share with you guys because I think it is right on point. So for those of you guys who are new, this is Faith in the Valley by Iyanla Van Zandt. I've been doing different readings every day from different books, and this has become such a favorite, I think, of everybody's. So I've got a really great one for you guys today, which I think is super relevant. Check this out. Loving a child and raising a child are two completely different things. Loving a child means learning how to nurture, teach, and guide. It means being free to let your child know who you are, how you feel, and what you need. Love requires truth, not just sheltering, protecting, or providing. Love means fun, pain, joy, tears, and no guarantees. Raising a child means learning tolerance, patience, acceptance, and forgiveness. It means learning how to teach responsibility, accountability, and dependability. Raising a child requires discipline and obedience, practicing it and teaching it. It means keeping your eyes and your mind open to all things under all circumstances. Raising a child requires trust of yourself to do the right thing and of your child to get it eventually. Many of us love our children so much we forget to raise them. We forget that they can think and feel and see. We forget that they can fall and get up, with or without our help. We love them because we are afraid to lose them, yet we lose them because we forget to raise them. I love that. I love that. Love it. And it's so true. It's so true. And as I say, when we look back at things like the Enfield case, there's so many of these learning opportunities that people, I think, just missed. And that Janet missed out on. She just missed out on. And a haunting like this, the damn thing is that it can really wreck a lot of childhood experiences. Tomorrow I want to go into a case that I wrote about in my book Teaching the Living, about a very good friend of mine whose experience was really shattered by this almost historical event, or very much tied into Alberta's history, having to do with the Wendigo and haunting in a little city not far from Edmonton. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow. But in the meantime, I wanted to give you guys something to do today. Because this, I thought, was the coolest thing. I actually saw this in theater. I wanted to pass it on to you guys because I think this is the neatest thing. It was one of the best productions I have ever seen. Ever. And that was the London's National Theatre production of Frankenstein by Danny Boyle. For those of you guys who saw 28 Days Later, Danny Boyle was the director. He directed this as well. It was starring Benedict Cumberbatch and Johnny Lee Miller, both brilliant actors. Benedict Cumberbatch has always been one of my favorites. I loved him in The Hobbit. Of course, he was great in Sherlock Holmes. For those of you guys who are fans of him, they ended up doing a play in 2011 with the London National Theatre, and it is phenomenal. So what they do is there's two versions of Frankenstein. And what they did, it was the same play, except in one version, they played the monster and the creator, Victor Frankenstein. And then in the other version, they ended up actually playing the reverse roles. So they flip roles in between. It's the coolest thing. You're going to really dig it. So I'm going to post that for you guys on Entity Seeker so you guys can check it out. It is phenomenal. They are posting free plays now every Thursday. So I'm going to throw that on YouTube for you so you guys can see it, because it is just the neatest thing. It is one of the coolest shows. And as I saw it when it was in theater, and it was absolutely spectacular. So I will post that for you guys today. Now, that being said, we have to do our health affirmations before we go back into our day today, because that is so important. Please stay home, you guys. If you're going outside, be careful. Just be in alignment. Just find your alignment before you go out. And respect social distancing right now, because I don't know about, different places in the US, but I know in Canada, there's so many areas now where we are flattening that curve out. We don't want to go backwards on this. We are doing so well. So just keep it up. So everybody, our health affirmations, take a breath. It is natural for my body to be well. Even if I don't know what to do in order to get better, my body does. I have trillions of cells with individual consciousness, and they know how to achieve individual balance. When this condition began, I didn't know what I know now. I don't need to understand the cause of this illness. I only have to gently, eventually release this illness. It doesn't matter how it got started because it's reversing its course right now. And there's no hurry about any of this. My body knows what to do, and well-being is natural to me. My inner being is intricately aware of my physical body. My cells are asking for what they need in order to thrive, and Source is answering those requests. I am in very good hands. My only work is to relax and breathe, and I can do that easily. Everybody take a breath. Thank you guys again for another amazing morning of spiritual healthcare. I love doing this with you guys every day. It is so much fun. It is so fantastic. I know it is Sunday and you guys have so much to do this morning. So I will let you all go. Chris, I noticed you've got a question in the chat. I will grab that as soon as I'm off, and I will get to that tomorrow. And thank you guys again so much for all of that. Much love to all of you, and I will see you right back here tomorrow morning, Spiritual Healthcare at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. If you guys are wanting the past classes or backup to other classes that we've done, entityseeker.ca has all of them, as well as youtube.com/entityseeker that you can go and find that. And I will post the link to the National Live Theater on Entity Seeker this morning. So I will see you guys tomorrow.